So this is a great time for this conference, because I think we're at a very interesting moment, a very crucial moment, in fact, in business history. And we're all part of a very significant transformation that's taking place. In fact, I think when we look back in a few years, we'll recognize that this is when we really saw this fundamental shift, a shift in perspective, a shift in focus in the modern world. And it's not just from a Western-centric view of the world to an Asian-centric view. Rather, I think we're shifting to a truly global view of not only our business world, but our companies, our markets, and our customers. And the rise of China is part of that story, but I'm not here as an expert on China. In fact, the rise of emerging markets overall, more broadly, is part of the story, but I'm not here as an expert on that either. Rather, my job is to look at this very significant shift through the much narrower lens of my discipline, which is marketing. And in fact, even more specifically, I'm here to look at it through the lens of Lenovo's marketing. But I think it's an interesting story, and I hope that the relatively narrow sort of story of Lenovo's marketing and our journey will help you think about the broader implications of this transformation and the new business that we're creating today. So to tell this story, I have to give you some background on Lenovo, the company. You may know us as the maker of ThinkPads. But we also make tablets, we make smartphones, we make workstations, we make other products in the technology space. We've become very large. Lenovo has become the second largest PC maker in the world. We've been growing very rapidly. In fact, just in the last 6 months, we went from being number 4 to number 2 in the industry, overtaking Acer and Dell. We're a global Fortune 500 company. And that was based on the $21 billion in sales that we had last year. This year, our run rate is at $30 billion, so we're growing even faster. We employ about 25,000 people, and we're successful. I mean, we operate in the PC industry, which, if you read the media, you'll discover is a weak industry and not doing very well. Last quarter, we grew 35% in units, 35% in revenue. 88% in profits. I exaggerate, it was 87.9%. But, and that was in a slow market. So you'd say, well, there's not much of a problem. Well, it turns out that there is. That as we look at where we're going, and we look at where we want to be over time, and we look at the markets that we want to address, the fact that Lenovo is not known and doesn't have a brand identity outside of China and outside of some specific segments with the ThinkPad is an issue. In fact, the BBC ran a story on us last month, and they characterized us as the biggest player in the computing world that you've almost certainly never heard of. And that is an issue, and it's an issue that's not just for Lenovo. It's an issue that's common to many large Asian companies, certainly many large Chinese companies. And here's a list of companies that are very successful, that are very high growth, and that are major players in their category. And yet, again, most of them do not have a significant brand presence anywhere outside of their main market. And this is becoming increasingly a concern for the China-based companies, and something that many companies are looking at addressing. In fact, another way to look at it is if you look at any statistics on the size of companies that are driving any category, you'll find some very major Chinese players in each of those categories. But if you look at the other classification, and this is the world's most valuable brands, and this is an annual statistic that comes out of Interbrand, and if you look at those 100 companies, there's not a single Chinese company on that list. And that is, we see that increasingly as an issue. Now, there's a logic to that, and it makes sense when you think about it. Some of those companies, in fact, the one at the top of the list, Coca-Cola, has been investing in building a brand for over 100 years. So and IBM not that far behind it. So there is a logic to that, but at the same time, that has become a crucial business challenge for Chinese companies to actually change that. And the reason we believe that it's possible to actually make that transition and make the transition very quickly and transform many of these companies into major global brands in much less than the 100 years that it took Coca-Cola to do it, is that we're really seeing some major trends in terms of what's happening in the world that makes that possible. And the two ones that I want to focus on is that, first of all, our markets have become truly global. And I know everybody says this all the time, but I want to show you what that actually means in our industry, and then and you can see how it applies to other industries. The other major change is not a geographic one, but it's a demographic one, that the youth audience and this global youth market has become the dominant consumer market. And that, again, is changing completely the perception of brands around the world. And I'll show you, how we look at that. So let me start off, first of all, with the change in global markets. I think a lot of people say that there's a shift to the east, and there's a shift to emerging markets in terms of the availability of markets. That is actually incorrect. It's not that it's shifting. It has already shifted. In my industry, in the PC industry, China this year became the world's single largest PC market, by a significant amount. And if you look at the growth, China is growing by 10%. The previously largest PC market, which is the US, is actually contracting and becoming smaller. And the growth of China is almost slow when you compare it to Brazil or compare it to Russia, that are growing at 25%, 27%. And if you look at where the number three, the contenders for the number three spot, even just last year, were the European markets, UK, Germany, and France, all of those are actually decreasing in terms of market size to the tune of 14 to 18%. So we've already seen that shift in where the markets are coming from. The second shift is in terms of the demographics. And what we've historically, traditionally, on the marketing side, we've had a very standard approach. You look at a demographic segmentation, and then you localize that segmentation by geography, and look at the differences around the world. Well, the internet is changing that, and the internet is actually creating something that we haven't seen before, which is, in fact, one global market that is very consistent around the world of this youth market that we call the net generation, because they actually grew up with the internet, and everything that they do is through the internet. And the youth market is totally different than any other audience we've ever seen before. And they're different because of the consistency. When you think about it, a college student in China actually, in some respects, has more in common with a college student here in Boston than with her parents in China, in terms of the music they listen to, in terms of the videos that they watch, in terms of the entertainment they consume, and in terms of how they perceive a brand, because they experience it through the internet. And as an audience, it's one that we can address very consistently and very globally, because, again, we have the internet as a tool to address them. And the net generation now has a lot of money, has huge purchasing power. They are, as they move into the workforce, they are totally reshaping the workforce. And certainly in my industry, in any technology space, they are the trendsetters. They are the ones that are determining, which are the brands that are going to be relevant and which are the ones that are not. They are the masters, the undisputed arbiters of culture and coolness. And so addressing them is crucial. And their perceptions of brands are very different than what we've seen in the past. This is a generation that's grown up with marketing. They understand advertising. You can't reach them through traditional advertising the way we've done before. They value peer opinions more so than any other generation we've seen before. They want to get the ideas of their peers, of others around them. They don't distinguish between information and entertainment. This is a generation that grew up with learning the alphabet through song and dance. There is no hard-line separation between entertainment and information. Therefore, information has to be entertaining, and entertainment is actually informational. But most importantly of all, their expectations of the brands that they really like, that the brands that they really value, are different than other generations. They take their brands much more seriously, and they expect their brands to share their values in terms of environmental issues, in terms of social issues, in terms of technology issues. And so the involvement of a brand is much greater. And of course, you're all familiar with this because you are part of that generation. I just look at it as an observer. In fact, I use my children as my laboratory. Now, as we see those changes, we see that the type of company that's going to succeed and the type of brand that is going to have the advantage in terms of succeeding in this truly global market, with this net generation, is different than the companies that have succeeded in the past. And there was an interesting story that Businessweek ran last year, where they looked at defining what they call these next generation global enterprises, and they identified three cultural attributes that really made them different than traditional worldwide multinational companies. The first one is these are companies that are very tightly networked. They don't operate with a hierarchical structure, with formal silos. And that networking enables them to very easily integrate assets and ideas from employees, from suppliers, from customers around the world. There also is this notion of polycentricity. These are companies that have multiple centers in terms of how they're organized, where they're located. And this gives them flexibility. It gives them the flexibility to adapt very quickly to an opportunity that emerges, so that they can take advantage of that opportunity. And the third factor is that they're highly diverse. They're diverse from a cultural standpoint. They allow multiple perspectives, and in fact, they have multiple value systems within the company. They allow those to exist, and that again helps in terms of flexibility. It helps in terms of speed of addressing issues. Now, coming back to my original point, most companies now aspire to start to build these attributes of being these next generation global enterprises. My contention is that companies coming from the emerging markets have a distinct advantage in terms of developing this style. And I'll just show you some specifics about Lenovo to support that point. When people look at Lenovo from the outside, some will say it's a Chinese company, some will talk about some other aspects of it. But if you look at how the company has grown, it's a history of major radical change, very frequently. So the company technically is an old company. We started in 1984. Legend was a technology startup in China at the time, which was pretty adventurous. It was started by 11 academics, $25,000 in venture funding from the Academy of Sciences. But the company transformed radically when it decided that the only way to really continue to grow was to become global. And so Lenovo set out to acquire what was then the preeminent brand in personal computers, which was the IBM PC. The acquisition of the IBM PC was not just the acquisition of a technology, it was the acquisition of a whole IBM ecosystem in terms of organization, in terms of people, in terms of an IBM culture, a way of doing business, in terms of a worldwide organization. So the end result of that was not bringing it into Legend. It was actually creating an entirely new company that was totally different than the previous Legend and the previous IBM. Lenovo has continued to do that. Last year, we actually did a major joint venture with NEC. NEC is the largest PC vendor in Japan. And again, it wasn't just a matter of buying the NEC business. It was a matter of incorporating NEC's whole way of doing business. NEC's technology, NEC's people, NEC's research, NEC's brand in Japan, which is a major brand, and creating yet another version of Lenovo as a new company. This year, we just completed the acquisition of a major German consumer technology brand, Medion. And again, that continues to change the company.